So we are now about 1 week away from the start of the Packers 2024 season. And so I want to give my Packers final record prediction. When we look at this Packers team, specifically on offense to start, this is a unit that I don't see any reasons for them to take a step back this year. It's pretty much the same starting offensive line outside of Jordan Morgan likely starting at right guard, which I think is going to make this offensive line even better. Last year, John Runyon Jr. and Sean Ryan were going back and forth starting at right guard. I think that Jordan Morgan will be an upgrade to that position. And when you look at the Packers' offensive line last year, they were one of the best pass-blocking offensive lines in the NFL. Second best pass block win rate per ESPN. They weren't quite as good when it came to blocking for the run. They were the 16th best run block win rate offensive line in the entire NFL. And I think that's one of the reasons we saw Jordan Love find success in year one was because he had a unit, an offensive line that was keeping him clean a majority of the time. And I see no reason why that would change this year. I think there could be a little bit more lack of depth outside of the starting five. Packers still don't seem to know who their swing tackle is going to be. Last year, the Packers had Bakhtiari, even though he was dealing with injury. Yosh Nijman. I think there's a little bit less depth outside of the starting five, but if those guys are healthy, I think that they should still be one of the best offensive lines when it comes to pass blocking in the NFL. And when we look last year, early in the season, there were so many hiccups early on, miscues, penalties, things like that, because this was a young Packers team that had a ton of guys out there who had no experience, who were in the league for the first time, figuring things out with a first-year starting quarterback. And we saw the struggles early on. We saw the losing streak. And later in the season, they really figured things out. I think that the rookies started to grasp the playbook better, understand what was happening. Jordan Love took big strides forward throughout the season. And one of the biggest factors was the fact that Aaron Jones missed a lot of time early in the season. And I think it's not surprising that one of the reasons the Packers got back on track late in the year was because their rushing attack was finally explosive again with Aaron Jones back and Aaron Jones healthy. Because early in the year, A.J. Dillon, was taking a lot of the carries, and he just wasn't great last year running the ball. 3.4 yards a carry, which was 59th in the NFL. 2.69 yards after contact per game, which was 49th in the NFL. And so going from Dillon to Aaron Jones coming back was a big part of this Packers team turning it all around in the second part of the season. And now, of course, the Packers have Josh Jacobs, who last year, his stats were pretty similar to A.J. Dillon. He had a down year, I would say, after his league-leading rushing year in 2022. But I think when you look at the Raiders' offense last year and the Packers' offense this year, it is a completely different situation. You go from Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, now in that offense there, to a team with Jordan Love, who has been one of the best passers in the past year in the NFL. And so defenses are not going to be able to just sit up there and load the box and key in on Josh Jacobs when you have one of the best passing attacks in the NFL with Christian Watson, with Romeo Doubs, with Jaden Reed, with Dontavian Wicks. And so because of how good this Packers passing attack is, I think that the running lanes are really going to open up for Josh Jacobs and allow him to get closer to that 2022 form that he had when he really played as one of the best running backs in the NFL. And when it comes to Jordan Love, I do think he's the best quarterback in the NFC. I don't think anyone else is as good as Jordan Love. He's better than Dak Prescott, better than Jalen Hurts. I think he's overall a more talented quarterback than Matthew Stafford. And so while it is still early in his career and we haven't seen that consistency yet, I do think that he is going to have a season that is just as good, if not better, than it was last year, just because the only things here I see are the things pointing in the right direction with the receiver room, the same guys coming back. They've built that chemistry, and I really think that Romeo Doubs could be the guys to lead this room just because of the chemistry they have here. But there's so many receivers that do different kinds of things that is really going to allow this Packers team to continue to improve going into 2024, and I do not see them taking a step back this year. And then if we move to the Packers defense, with Joe Barry during his 3 years in Green Bay, it was just riddled with inconsistency. last year there would be times where this Packers defense played really well, held the Lions in check on Thanksgiving, won that game, beat the Chiefs the next week, held them to 19. And then we go through a stretch of games where Tommy DeVito, Baker Mayfield, and Bryce Young just completely destroyed this Packers defense. Bryce Young looked like a top-tier quarterback against his Packers defense last year, had his best game of the entire year against the Packers defense, his most passing yards, 312, his best pass rating all year of 110. And so even though there were some games here and there where this Packers defense played really well, it was still very, very inconsistent. And so there's no surprise that Matt LaFleur decided to bring in Jeff Hafley. And I think that when you look at the difference between Joe Barry and Jeff Hafley, it's going to be a night and day difference in the way that they run these defenses. With Joe Barry bringing in a more passive type scheme, Jeff Hafley going to be very aggressive, a lot of different looks, less read and react from the defensive line, and much more attacking, a lot less thinking. And if you've listened to lots of these Packers players and their thoughts on this new scheme, you can tell that they're very excited for what they're going to be able to do under Jeff Hafley, and it sounds like he's really going to get the most out of all the talent the Packers have on this defense. Because with Xavier McKinney now at safety, Jair at corner, Rashawn Gary at defensive end, Kenny Clark in the interior, and a lot of other weapons, the Packers have so much talent on this defense. And if you look last year to some of the statistics, the Packers were the 10th best scoring defense, but they were 23rd in EPA per play, 24th in EPA per pass, 22nd in EPA per rush. And this has been a defense that year in and year out has been one of the worst in the league for a while, usually ranking pretty far down in the 20s. And so I'm hoping that we'll see a improvement in this area. And you also look at the Packers pass rush. Last year they were 6th in pressure rate in the NFL with Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness. And I think especially with Devontae Wyatt coming into his third year, Lucas Van Ness coming into his second year, I do think this Packers defense is going to take big strides forward. There is the uncertainty just because it is Jeff Hafley's first year in the NFL. And of course, throughout the preseason, we don't really get a clear idea of how he's going to operate things. But I'm very, very confident in this Packers team. And so my final record is going to be Packers 12-5 winning the NFC North. I think that when you look at the potential outcomes, I really think winning from 11 to 14 games is very likely. It just comes down to how good this defense is going to be. If this defense is top 5, I don't think 14-3 is out of the question. And right after the Packers schedule release, I gave some predictions, and I had the Packers going 14-3. Since that time, just doing some thinking, I think that 12-5 is more reasonable. I think 14 wins is possible, but just going based on what I think is most likely to happen, I'm rocking with the Packers going 12-5, winning the NFC North. I think the Lions have a very good team, but I think they're going to be 11-6. The Bears still, I don't think, have reached that next top tier level. I think they'll go 9-8, and I got the Vikings at 6-11. So those are my thoughts on this Packers team. As you can tell, I'm very confident. I see no reason why this Packers team would take a step back, honestly. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe, and you can follow me on Twitter at LukeBeller3.